I've now been here more than a week, well again, and at long last again at work, which, however, does not flow easily. After all, I've composed almost nothing in the past 20 months. Now it seems as if something will come of it. Out of many plans, the following has crystallized. A concerto for piano and violin with accompaniment of 10 wind instruments, woodwind and brass. The old idea of a piano concerto, and then the idea of a double, triple, even quadruple concerto, forgive my incurable elephantiasis, has kept me in thrall. So wrote the composer of this programme's music in July 1923. 20 months previously, in 1921, this young man of 36 had found himself so acutely embarrassed that the work he had just finished, and for which there was no foreseeable performance, was only his opus 7, that he had decided forthwith to stop giving his pieces opus numbers. And yet, that opus 7 was one of the undisputed masterpieces of this century, an epoch-making work, the opera Wozzeck, its composer Alban Berg. He was born in 1885 in Vienna, and together with Anton Webern became one of the first composition pupils of Arnold Schoenberg. The relationship between the three men, despite all its many vicissitudes, is one of the most important in 20th century music, a relationship brought to an end only by death, Berg dying first, tragically, of blood poisoning in 1935 at the age of 50. The work that was so laboriously crystallizing in his mind in 1923, which would have been his opus 8, eventually emerged as the chamber concerto for piano, violin, and 13 wind instruments. As it lasts for well over half an hour, we shall concentrate on the first movement alone. There'll be 2 levels of activity in the programme. Whilst we, the musicians, try to put the piece together to make it work, so to speak, we, the commentators, the filmmakers, will take it apart to show why and how it does work. So I'm on the screen in a dual capacity, both as a performer and as a commentator. My role is split. Even as a musician in this day and age, my role is split to some extent. I'm a professional musician. I appear on the concert platform. I play concertos and recitals in tales with all the paraphernalia. But of course, even in my own home, I'm still a musician. I practice, I play the piano to myself, and of course, I make chamber music with friends. Now, in Berg's day, there was a great deal more of this chamber music making, and in the 19th century there was far more chamber music making than public concert making. In one sense, that is one of the foremost concerns of this piece, the coexistence of those two worlds, and it's there right at the very start. Imagine a performance in the concert hall of this piece. The orchestra is on stage. On come the stars, the pianist, the violinist, the archetypal concerto soloist, with the 2 concerto instruments par excellence, the piano and the violin, and the conductor. Applause. What happens? Music for piano, violin, and horn, like the Brahms horn trio, unconducted. So the stage spectacle, the setup, is for concerto. The first music you hear is chamber. So already there are questions. The piece was a birthday tribute to Schoenberg, and what the instruments actually play are musical equivalents of the names Arnold Schoenberg, Anton Webern, and Alban Berg. In English musical notation, of course, we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They can do 2 more letters in German, S, which is their E flat, and H. H is B in German notation. Their B is B flat, so they've got 2 more notes. And so out of Arnold, you can get the A and the D, and so on. But more than musical material, there's a musical characterization going on. The piano plays Arnold Schoenberg, very precise. There's a marvellous letter which tells me all about Schoenberg, written by Berg to his wife. He went round to the Schoenbergs one evening, and he says, We played cards nearly all the time, and delightful as you can imagine, with long discussions after every hand about what mistakes had been made. Even when playing cards, Schoenberg is as precise and skillful as in everything else, solving all problems mathematically, reasoning everything out, leaving the minimum to chance. Refreshments were good, though. There is the precise Schoenberg in the piano. Webern, who was terribly nervous and highly strung, there he is on the violin. And Berg, who was introverted, very gentle, retiring man, of course gives himself the archetypal romantic instrument, the horn. Three types of music: precise, nervy, brooding. These Berg now elaborates into a marvellous theme for the full orchestra. The general mood is very Viennese. Wiener Blut, Vienna blood, the title of the Johann Strauss waltz. The waltz rhythm is unmistakable. All those hesitations and accelerations, the kind of swooning music, the whole repertory of Viennese gestures. But are the gestures real, serious, or are they just somehow on the surface? It's very difficult to tell. Romanticism, yes. Vienna, yes. But it's romanticism and Vienna in inverted commas. And because the way this piece is composed, like for instance taking sequences of notes and playing them back to front or upside down, there aren't too many recognizable groups of notes in this piece, tunes if you like, but you always recognize the gestures whenever they occur. They're very noticeable. The whole piece is a theatre of gestures. Variation 1 is an extended piano solo, a rhapsodic commentary on the theme. There you have the supreme solo instrument, able to play all the notes it takes 13 separate orchestral instruments to play, and conducted, and with all that extraordinary rush of personal feeling and expression, fantasy, poetry, bravura, everything that's the hallmark, the sine qua non of a solo artist. Anyone who plays a musical instrument at home for himself or herself, at whatever level of accomplishment, knows that there's something very special about that kind of music making. And somehow the piano solo provides exactly the link between the private chamber music making world and the public concert world. The same individual intensive expression is there in both.
Good idea just to ease it forward into variation 2. So at the moment where the piano starts to disintegrate and turn into that very simple waltz rhythm, it just flows into the change of tempo just to...
Yeah, I thought that was. It ought to be more than that.
Maybe just a little. He marks it halfway through bar 59.
That's right.
So gradually this waltz idea, we suddenly realise it's there and it's come out of what's happened rather than it suddenly being there.
I was forgetting to look at the conductor. I was still being a
Oh, never do that. No, it's cardinal sin, isn't it?
Theme and variations in this piece refers not only to a compositional procedure, but to a dramatic process as well. The variations are a sequence of scenes, variations of dramatic viewpoint, insights into possible interrelationships, exactly the same thing that Berg had done in his opera Wozzeck. So far, we've seen the protagonists in this drama in familiar roles and in accustomed situations. A group of musicians playing together as an orchestra, tutti. The piano soloist is just that. And from here on, the piano and the ensemble will be involved in different relationships. They'll act out alternative roles, involve themselves in different degrees of collaboration or competition. And Variation 2 is a particularly radical scene. Compositionally, it takes the musical material and runs it in reverse. And interestingly and fascinatingly, this produces a complete reversal in the status of the piano and the orchestra. After his florid piano solo, the pianist is now reduced to playing vamp-till-ready Viennese waltz rhythms. The composer deliberately set himself all sorts of problems to solve in this piece. One of them was how to square the roles of piano soloist and the piano in the chamber orchestra. This is the program of a famous waltz evening, one of Schoenberg's private music club concerts, with arrangements of Johann Strauss waltzes by Schoenberg, Webern and Berg. Berg's is Wine, Women and Song, for a chamber orchestra, where the piano is very much reduced to a pom-pom-pom function. The pianist becomes more and more impatient with his reduced role. He starts stamping out the rhythms more and more, and the trombone decides he will take him down a peg or two with the full approval of the orchestra. Now, just in case you think I'm being fanciful and reading that in, Berg produces a most astonishing dramatic gesture in this variation. The violinist, who has been sitting there now since she played the motto, doing absolutely nothing, decides she'll simply try out the open string. She's so bored with all this drama going on.
Strange that. I think he marks you to remain seated, doesn't he? I think basically just a bit of colour, and you sort of say, look, don't forget about me, I'm still here. Which I had forgotten about you.
Will you kill me or not?
No, I think just leave it to you. So that it just sort of... And when we get to 91, the stretta, just really letting it go so that it's a bit more berserk, sort of lots of chatter, laughter, with other sort of farmyard noises. Let's just do just the brass alone, could we, from 81. And the trombone sort of cutting through and saying he's had enough of it. So lots of snarl. And I know it's awkward, that glissando, because if I remember rightly, doesn't it go...
None of them work very well.
They're not actually written on one slide, are they?
You want them to be the opposite of discrete, indiscrete.
Yeah.
Very
yes. So I mean, as long as we hear the first and the last note, and a filthy noise in between, that sort of nails scraping on blackboard.
It's the point at which I get tired of playing waltz rhythms and suddenly burst out in a proper piano arpeggio figuration, and you just do that very impertinent thing. So that if it's difficult to play and sounds awful, it will be even better.
Do you think he's trying to tell you to shut up?
I think he's really impertinent. I think it's the orchestra cocking a snooker at me, and they go pom 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 pom. In other words, get back to the waltz rhythms you're supposed to be playing. And so the variation ends with all the roles grotesquely uneasy and ill-defined, no attempt at compromise whatsoever. relationship between piano and ensemble remains uneasy. There's a sharing of roles, but the gestures are very rigid. We're all sticking doggedly to our positions. There's an absurd attempt at compromise with the sequence of chords. It's one gesture, one rhythmic and melodic pattern, but we all play just one chord at a time, and it's very difficult.
Very good, very good. I would suggest you almost don't listen to the piano, or if you do, know where he is. Often the piano, instead of being on the beat, is on the half beat. So the second bar will come out as one. Ba, 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 ba. Okay, could we just try that once again? 145.
Berg, with his main tune and secondary tune, his Hauptstimmen and Nebenstimmen, has given his players a kind of threat to get them through the maze. But nevertheless, a tremendous responsibility of elaboration of the musical material devolves on the players themselves and on their conductor. They have to listen and interpret very carefully. They must combine a strong degree of individual involvement with a very highly developed sense of collaboration. More than just a virtuosity of technique, this is a virtuosity of response. This is a chamber concerto, so that allied to this highly virtuoso demonstration of public music making, there's a certain chamber music intimacy. It's a very democratic work. A vast work of collaboration and cooperation. There's no hierarchy of conductor, soloists, section principals, rank and file. None of that at all. And for me, this piece highlights what should be the essence of 20th century music making and the dignity of a musician in the 20th century. Not one of a crowd of players, but a virtuoso soloist in a group of other virtuoso soloists, listening intently to each other, interpreting each other's playing.
Let's just go back, please, to beginning of Variation 4. Just listen once to what the piano has and just follow your own part. This is 161. In other words, there's absolutely no flexibility at all. We have to play absolutely with that. So if we stretch at all playing a nice legato melody, we come adrift. And I'm in front of the piano, I can barely hear it. Okay, 151, slightly quicker.
Height of all the virtuoso fun and games for the musicians, the Arnold Schoenberg motif is repeated. But why is he here? Because according to the compositional procedure, he shouldn't be. So the reason must be dramatic. Is he, like in this photo, standing over his pupil admiringly or disapprovingly? In dedicating the piece to Schoenberg, Berg wrote to him, "The concerto is the very art form in which not only the soloists, including the conductor, have the chance to show off their brilliance and virtuosity, the author can too for once." Now, inevitably, the person to whom he most wanted to show off his virtuosity was his teacher, and yet their relationship was ever an uneasy one. During the planning stages of the piece, Berg went round to the Schoenbergs and wrote to his wife. It wasn't too pleasant an atmosphere, because he kept on finding fault with my chamber concerto. He doesn't like the piano in this combination. And yet he wants me to tell him how the piece is shaping, what sort of thing it will be, and all the time with advice, admonitions, warnings, in fact, generally pouring cold water. He's already recommended my concerto to several ensembles and had even asked a fee for me. This is all very kind and may do me some good, but it all goes on with such an air of tutor to apprentice, even orders from higher authority, that I feel more annoyed than pleased. I'm rather scared of Easter Sunday when I'm invited for lunch. Well, he went round for Easter Sunday, and Schoenberg was in a different mood, because he was able to write this time to his wife. Schoenberg was very nice, and once more very friendly to me. He wants to show me all the secrets in his new works. The secrets were, of course, Schoenberg's newly formulated method of composing with 12 tones. And whilst Berg did incorporate some of the rudiments of this method into the chamber concerto, I doubt that Schoenberg would have approved of the tribute, because at this time he was rather fanatically proclaiming the inviolability of his method to another pupil. He wrote, "Promiscuity with the elements of the older system could, at this stage, only obstruct and delay its natural growth. But when it consolidates itself, the time will come, no doubt, for the reintegration of the many elements of the older system, which, for the present, we must firmly discard."
Would you agree just to let that go a little faster at the end?
Yeah.
Come. If we think of the opening speed.
But you don't want it to accelerando through 178, do you? It's that bar where I feel you're still carrying on the accelerator, or is it me that's...
No. On the contrary, I feel you're just a little bit late in.
Oh, sorry.
The last go over 177. Dum. The actual speed is a bit quicker, isn't it? Dum. Let's go just into the end of that. Let's do 172, could we please? Then we'll go into variation 5. 172. Very good. Not so good.
Promiscuity with the elements is a positively mild description of the chamber concerto. Alongside the rudiments of Schoenberg's method and the 4 polyphonic procedures of basic shape, retrograde, that's reverse, inversion, upside down, and retrograde inversion are aspects of tonality, atonality, palindrome, number symbolism, musical ciphers, classical forms like sonata, rondo, theme and variations, all sorts of things like that. It doesn't matter if you don't know precisely what all those things are. It's simply enough to know that they are established procedures, received conventions, bits of musical reality, if you like. Now, what Berg does is to blast these out of their usual context, their usual locations, and to rebuild them into a fantastic creation, a sort of hybrid piece of musical architecture, so that there are always questions raised as to what their precise function is in the scheme of things. And that is a musical critique. This is a piece which questions the conditions of its own existence as it unfolds. After the fantastic display of virtuosity in Variation 4, all the players have now earned the right to express themselves, to comment individually. Those groups of notes are called just that in Italian, gruppetti. It's a classical type of ornament, almost a musical cliché, and its articulation was always left to the whim of an individual player.
Now, excuse me, if it's possible for us to keep the tempo, Paul, in 2-1-8, you've got duplets against triplets in the trumpet.
Yeah.
So that bar fits neatly, and then in the next bar, relax a little bit. Let's do it with the 2 flutes and trumpet, please. Put that together from 2-1-4. Paul.
With piano?
Please, yeah. 2-1-4. Feel you like to pull it back a little earlier?
No, I don't think we can, otherwise they have to deform their gesture too much, don't they?
Yes, and the polka rip then goes down
the
to...
answer is yes, I do feel I'd like to pull it back, but I don't think I should.
Which you are doing. It's just that one bar, you get the triplets and the trumpets against your duplets in 2-1-8. Let's keep that flowing, and then we can stretch and it will help the subito diminuendo in the next part. Okay, let's put that together, everybody, from 211, please.
The complex multi-layering, it seems though everybody has the main tune now, is very hard on the listeners as well as the players. In the 19th century, most chamber music was made by amateurs in their homes. The average middle-class household made music, and this music was written for them. Amateurs can't play the Berg Chamber Concerto. The notes alone are too difficult. And so Berg's doing something new in this piece. The words chamber and concerto would have seemed incompatible in the 19th century. It's a new idea to turn a chamber piece into a concert piece. And what Berg, it seems to me, is proposing is a new form of participation in music. Quite simply, as a listener, you cannot hear this whole piece. Your ear will home in on certain things, and other things will be surrounding it in a subsidiary way. You will hear some things mainly, other things not so strongly. And with a wealth of things thrown at the ear like that, it seems to me you have two responses. Either you cease to listen altogether, or you listen creatively. All music in the 20th century demands that you be an active listener. And with the Berg, you have to be a positively virtuoso listener. You cannot just receive this piece. At each and every point, as you go through the piece, each individual listener will determine for himself what is heard. He will get it in one way, his neighbour will get it in another way. And each time you hear this piece, you will chart a different course through it. Quite simply, with a piece like this, the listener becomes a co-producer of the piece.
Second movement, we should try and do it so that the chord is suddenly discovered, a gigantic crescendo from everybody, and when the resonance dies down, we suddenly discover the violin, who's been sitting here discreetly throughout the first movement. Suddenly, we're into the second movement.
And at that point, as one drama ends, another fades in a very cinematic gesture, and Berg was an avid cinema goer. This time it involves the violin soloist and ensemble, and is in turn succeeded by a third, which achieves the seemingly impossible feat of superimposing the other two, played out at first between the violin and piano alone, then between all the protagonists. Clearly, within the time limits of our programme, we can only initiate you into the beginnings of one dramatic process, and it's only one of the many types of drama being enacted. Berg himself referred to a world of friendship, love, and human spiritual relationships, of which no one would have an inkling. The chamber concerto is a labyrinth, elaborate, involved, interwoven with all sorts of commentaries, shot through with all manner of matters. It's impossible for the listener, any listener, to fix it, to grasp it as a whole. He is simply caught in the interplay. The work itself is a rehearsal.